Thank you, Ms. Hyman. Our next panel is the state agency's effort to assist Corinthian students, and we have Nicholas Campins from the Office of the Attorney General, Joanne Wenzel from the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, and Catalina Mistler from the Student Aid Commission. Please join us at the table. And we'll start with Nicholas. Morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Campins. I'm the lead Deputy Attorney General on our office's case against Corinthian colleges and the subsidiaries that operated Heald, Everest, and Wyotech schools. In October 2013, we filed our case in San Francisco Superior Court to hold Corinthian accountable for alleged violations of California law, including misrepresenting job placement rates to students, misrepresenting job placement rates to investors, advertising for programs that it does not offer, unlawfully using official United States military seals, inserting unlawful clauses in enrollment agreements, subjecting students to unlawful debt collection practices in connection with its subprime private loan program, misrepresenting Corinthian's role in its Genesis subprime private loan program, and misrepresenting the transferability of credits. As we allege in paragraph 2 of our complaint, Corinthian engaged in these unlawful, unfair, and fraudulent practices in connection with the sale of programs that are very expensive. For example, Heald College in San Francisco charged $39,510 in tuition and fees and $3,500 in books and supplies for an Associate of Applied Science degree in medical assisting. As we allege in paragraph 3 of our complaint, Corinthian sold these expensive programs to students throughout California, many of whom had single-parent families and have annual incomes near the federal poverty line. Corinthian targeted this demographic, which described in internal company documents as composed of isolated, impatient individuals with low self-esteem and who have few people in their lives who care about them, who are stuck and unable to see and plan well for the future. Through aggressive and persistent internet and telemarketing campaigns and through television ads on daytime TV shows like Jerry Springer and Maury Povich. On July 3, 2014, following the Department of Education's actions, which were described in detail earlier, we filed a supplemental complaint alleging that Corinthian misrepresented their dire financial situation to consumers and failed to disclose to students the pending closure or sale of its campuses. We attempted to secure a temporary restraining order, but the court denied our request. We then reached an agreement with Corinthian where it agreed to take down certain statements on his website about lifetime job placement, et cetera, and to issue certain disclosures to current and future students. The case is still pending. We are aggressively litigating the case. However, the court has stayed party discovery until June 31st, 2015, following the party stipulations. We agreed to the stay in order to allow Corinthian to comply with federal grand jury demands related to pending federal criminal investigations. On May 4, 2015, Corinthian declared bankruptcy. We are evaluating our options, but we will continue to vigorously pursue relief for California students harmed by Corinthian's alleged predatory conduct. In light of the closure and subsequent bankruptcy, our office has worked very closely with our sister state agencies and law enforcement partners to assist the students that have been displaced by the closure of Heald, Everest, and Wyotech. We have created a website, oag.ca.gov/Corinthian, to serve as a hub for informational resources for students. On this website, we have an interactive tool that asks students a series of simple questions. Their answers then result in a personalized resource page that includes information on relief eligibility, a list of legal aid organizations, and a list of community colleges and other public institutions within a 10-mile radius that offer similar programs. Thousands of students have visited our website and benefited from it already. We also participated in a webinar, which was graciously hosted by the California Student Aid Commission, in which the Bureau, the community college's chancellor, and the East Bay Community Law Center participated in to brief students on their options. There's also been a tremendous effort by legal aid organizations to ensure that there is coverage for all of the affected communities that were impacted by these school closures. We have also distributed a flyer at the community colleges and are planning additional messaging to students as events arise. We also continue to advocate on behalf of these students in every forum possible. For example, Attorney General Harris and other state attorneys general sent a letter to the Department of Education asking it to create a streamlined process for students to assert the defense to repayment of federal loans based on Corinthians' alleged violations of state law. We continue to advocate on that matter and others before the department and to make the process, both in terms of the closed school discharge and the defense to repayment, as easy as possible for students. In addition, we are now supporting the efforts to improve access to the Student Tuition Recovery Fund that's being advanced in Assembly Bill 573. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Joanne?
Good morning, chairs and committee members. I'm Joanne Wenzel. I'm the chief of the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education. With the assistance of the Department of Consumer Affairs Travel, Accounting, Public Information, and Business Services offices, the Bureau deployed 26 staff to 13 locations to meet with students on April 28th and 29th, and those 13 locations were the 11 Everest institutions and 2 Wyotech institutions. While on campuses, the Bureau met with over 3,500 students, or approximately 85% of the students that were enrolled at the time of closure. The Bureau does have a list of those students, and as soon as we catalog all 3,500 of those students that we met with, we will be sending information to those students that we did not have an opportunity to meet with. When we met with students, the Bureau distributed closed school guides, STRIF applications, and a list of approved schools, both community colleges within the counties and approved institutions that are approved by the Bureau in Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Orange, and San Mateo counties. The closed school guide covers everything. This is not the first closed school incident we've been involved in. Approximately 66 schools close every year. Most of them are not precipitous closures. However, we do experience 1 or 2 precipitous closures every year. And we basically do the same thing every time we have a precipitous closure. So the closed school guide talks about what their options are as far as student loan discharge, who to contact, STRIF options, and includes a STRIF application. Prior to deploying the staff, we held STRIF training sessions for all of the staff that were going out, because not all of them work in the Student Tuition Recovery Fund section of the Bureau. And we also provided media training. While we were on site, understanding the value of the press and what the press can do to assist students and get the word out for what their options are, at 4 locations, we made ourselves available for any kind of press interviews, whether it was radio or television or newspaper that came out. Those locations were the City of Industry, Anaheim, Fremont, and Alhambra. We updated our website to include additional or clarifying information based on recommendations from the Attorney General, and also a link to the webcast that was facilitated by CSAC and that the Bureau also participated in. The Bureau is the custodian of records for all of these campuses, and that would include the HEAL campuses as well as the Everest and Wyotech. We expect by the end of this week, we're hoping by today, we receive electronic records for all of those students. These records are imperative for these students if they want loan discharges, if they want to apply for transfer of their credits to anywhere they want to go, or if they want to apply for STRIF, they need to have certain documents. We're anticipating that these records go back 5 to 7 years, but we're not sure what these records will include at this point. We do expect by the end of the month, we will receive 25,000 boxes of records along with servers and CPUs from Corinthian that contains the records that are mandated to be maintained forever. Presently, we're working on additional website enhancements. We're receiving and responding to approximately 100 telephone calls per day from students with a variety of questions, mostly about loan discharge and eligibility for student tuition recovery. And we're responding to approximately 30 emails every day. As of yesterday afternoon, we had 59 STRIF claims pending. And to speak to, is the fund sufficient? If all 41 approximate students apply for STRIF that were eligible at the Everest and Wyotech locations, and we pay the average STRIF amount, the total will be about $26 million. So we'll have a little slush fund of about $2 million. Pardon?
Finish there.
Yeah.
I'll be talking.
That is where we are today.
Okay, thank you. Student Aid Commission.
You can see that they're not accredited.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Catalina Missler. I'm with the California Student Aid Commission. I'm the Division Chief of the Program Administration and Services Division. We're responsible for overseeing the Customer Relations branch. We have two branches, a Tier 1 that students directly contact our service representatives for information about their Cal Grant. We also get numerous calls just from interested parties and other students who may be interested in looking at what other financial resources are available to them. And our Tier 2 is responsible for assisting students who are having issues with campuses. So we work directly with the students in the campuses for any disbursements or issues in terms of their Cal Grant eligibility. We also oversee an institutional support that has responsibility for working directly with the campuses, reviewing institutional participation agreements that campuses who are interested in participating in the Cal Grant program must submit an application. It is reviewed. They must meet the correct criteria that is established by the statute, and also the cohort default rate and graduation rates. To participate in the Cal Grant program, institutions must meet the statutory qualifying institution requirements and sign the institutional participation agreement. The agreement stipulates the conditions institutions must comply with in order to continue their participation in the program. Corinthian Colleges Incorporated owned Heald, Everest, and Wyotech colleges, and all participated in the Cal Grant program until the 2011-12 academic year, where the 3-year cohort default rate, CDR, became part of the qualifying institution definition in the Cal Grant law, thanks to the California legislature. Most of the campuses could not meet the original 24.6 CDR that was required for participation, and therefore were eliminated from participation in the Cal Grant program. Since that time, only Heald College retained Cal Grant eligibility for a few of its campuses. After some restructuring of its reporting at the federal level, Heald College was able to blend their CDRs from multiple campuses, which allowed all 10 of its campuses to meet the CDR requirements for Cal Grant participation for the 2014-15 academic year, which began on July 1st, 2014. Over 4,500 students were offered a Cal Grant at Heald colleges for the 14-15 academic year. Over 3,000 Heald College students received fall term payments, and over 2,500 students received winter term payments. On August 14, 2014, the Commission put Heald College on an at-risk institution status, which provided manual payments to them. They had to work their rosters, determine student eligibility prior to the Commission dispersing any funds to the campus. On February 13th, a communication was sent to all Heald College students informing them that Heald College's institutional participation agreement was under review and that no additional Cal Grant payments would be dispersed to the campuses. Students were informed that HEAL's participation would be discussed at the Commission's February 19th and 20th Commission meeting, and we provided the link for them to listen into the meeting. The Commission halted any further payments to HEALed. At its February 19th Commission meeting, the Commission took the action to withhold HEALed College's spring quarter payments. HEALed College was to provide student spring enrollment records to confirm the eligibility of each student and would release the spring quarter funds and terminate its participation in the Cal Grant program unless HEALed could provide competent, sufficient, and reliable information that Corinthian, and by extension of HEALed, have the financial resources to participate in the Cal Grant program. HEALed College students were notified of the Commission's decision and of the status of their Cal Grant spring quarter payments. HEALed College provided all of the enrollment information for those Cal Grant students eligible for spring term payments. Another communication was released to students on April 22nd, informing them that we were performing audits on individual student-by-student records, and once we complete the audit, we would inform them of the payment options available to them. Commission staff have been actively participating in community events to assist HEALed College students. Many students have come out to our campus, and most of those students were the students who were attending the HEALed College Rancho Cordova campus. And they've come to discuss what options are available to them. Some of those students were not Cal Grant recipients, but they wanted to understand what tools were available to help them identify what loans they had outstanding, the types of loans that would be eligible for discharge. Many of these students weren't even aware that they had the difference between a private loan and a federal loan. They didn't know where to even search to find out what the amounts of the loans dispersed. And as we assisted them and walked them through the process, we informed them of what the U.S. Department of Education has available for them to look up their federal information. The amounts that they had made available to them was not the same amount that was showing on the U.S. Department of Education's site, because they were private loans. So students were confused. They're very confused, and they just wanted to know what's the next step for them and where they need to go. We spent over an hour and a half with 4 of the students, just showing them the links that were available to them and also providing them with information. Many of those students asked if they could transfer their Cal Grant, if whatever remaining eligibility was, to another eligible institution. And to most of those students, an eligible institution to them was a for-profit institution because they didn't know any different. We had informed them that their options, because the Cal Grant Award is portable, that they could attend a community college and take the same courses, and for them to also seek assistance from a counselor at a community college so that they had other options to continue or complete their educational goals. So on May the 4th, the Commission hosted a webcast and partnered with the Attorney General's Office, the Bureau of Postsecondary Education, the East Bay Law Center, and the Community College Chancellor's Office to provide information to all HEALed students as to what options were available and assistance to them. To date, the Commission has identified 1,733 HEALed College students that are eligible for the Cal Grant. The Commission will process Cal Grant payments beginning next week. Our staff will also continue to assist students in transferring their Cal Grant awards to other eligible qualifying institutions if they have remaining program eligibility after their spring term payment is dispersed. The Commission is committed to assisting these students to use their Cal Grant funds to continue their educational endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very sobering. Questions, Senator Moaning?
Thank you, Madam Chair, co-chairs, for convening this and for the participation of all the panel members. I think my first question to the Attorney General's office, you mentioned that Corinthian HEALed is in bankruptcy proceedings. Is there who is a voice for students who may have paid their own money, not the beneficiary of a Cal Grant or a loan? Where do students fit in to recover any economic damage to them in that bankruptcy proceeding?
Certainly. So I think, as I said, we're still evaluating our options in the bankruptcy proceeding, but generally what I would say is students who have paid out of pocket, in the event that they're an Everest or a WyoTech student, I think they should get in touch with the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, because the STRIF fund would be the best place for them to look to get some compensation. I'm not aware currently of whether there is a source of those funds for healed students. There is, my understanding is there is legislation pending in the Assembly that would expand the eligibility for the STRIF fund and also expand the amount of funds available in the STRIF fund to try to assist those students in recovering some of their out-of-pocket costs. In terms of the bankruptcy itself, I think it's easy to say that it's clear to see from what's been publicly filed and what's been reported in news outlets is that Corinthian has apparently $20 million in assets at this time, and they have over $90 million that they owe to Bank of America alone in a lending facility. There are several other large secured creditors. So I think there's going to be a lot of fighting within that bankruptcy proceeding to try to see whatever those very limited funds, $20 million for the entire country, are available to students.
In that, those assets, that includes property that, does Corinthian Healed own any of their campus properties?
Well, my understanding from looking at the securities filings for Corinthian is that they engaged in what was called a sale and leaseback. So basically, they sold all their campuses to these other companies and leased them back, and basically stripped themselves of those physical assets. So my understanding is they do still own a few properties, a few real properties, but not much. And the other things that they would have would be personal property, and a lot of that is leased as well. Even computers and copiers were all leased.
Well, again, it sounds like the liabilities far exceed any assets, in that there's going to be financial institutions in line as creditors. Any of you know the breakdown? Maybe you said this earlier. Students who have paid from their own money or private loans versus those that have been eligible for Cal grants. I mean, what's the breakdown of students who won't necessarily be eligible moving forward for Cal grants?
Well, I can say, I'm trying to answer your question as fully as possible. I would say that a very large number of the students, the substantial majority of them, had private loans. And that was, I don't know if you heard from what the legislative analyst said, there's this 90-10 issue. And so it was no secret in the industry, a lot of what was happening is they actually raised tuition to create a gap above the max that the federal government would provide, to create this gap so that 10% gap would be funded by these subprime loans that sometimes had interest rates in excess of 14%. So I would say the substantial majority did have these private loans. And like their federal counterparts, they're not dischargeable in bankruptcy and will stick with them their entire lives.
If I can add about the private loans, it's a little bit more complicated as their Genesis loans. When they sold, Corinthian basically sold all of their campuses except for those that were in California. And when those sold, they took $12 million of those proceeds and bought back $480 million worth of Genesis loans, which were their self-generated loans, and then discharged them. So one of the things we're working through with some of our STRIF claims is to try to figure out, is this an active loan or is this a loan been discharged? Because the students are not always aware of what's what. So we're assisting them sorting through all of that as well.
Thank you. And I know others have questions. Just a final question. Any of this conduct constitute criminal activity? Are there criminal investigations going on?
I could only comment on what's been publicly reported in the company's securities filings, and it's been publicly reported that there are federal grand juries that have been convened with regard to Corinthian. And that is one of the reasons why we agreed to a stay of discovery in our case, is because there are pending federal criminal investigations.
Thank you. Thank you, chairs.
Senator Block.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have a question For Ms. Wenzel. A few years ago, I authored a bill, AB 2296, which called on the Bureau to set regulations that would govern information for students, making information available on these private for-profit schools' websites and written information to inform or warn students about things like their gainful employment rates, which may well have made a difference to Heald students and Wyotech students. Have these regulations been promulgated by the Bureau yet?
They're going through the process at this point. They were heard by the advisory committee, and they're on their way to the Office of Administrative Law.
If I'm not mistaken, the bill actually called for these to be done by July 1st of 2014,
That is correct.
nearly a year ago.
Yes.
Is it safe to presume some of these students might have been spared some of the cost of all this had the Bureau done its work on time?
That's possible.
Thank you.
Senator Markowski?
Free legal advice from the dais, since I'm a bankruptcy attorney. I believe that the Attorney General, if she wants to be aggressive, can actually help form a creditors committee in the Chapter 13, which will be the largest creditors that are there, and you can bulk all the students that have poverty student loans. The other thing, if they don't file a plan of reorganization, the creditors committee can, which will allow you to provide some requirements by the recovering debtor to reach out to these students and provide the information. I mean, I don't know why a student that is eligible to have their federal loan forgiven wouldn't take advantage of it. I mean, I can't speak for the other people in the dais, but all three of you and your departments should be doing everything we can to make sure that students know about this. That's like Senator Block, I have a little frustration because I had a bill in 2011 about the cohort default rate. I actually introduced the bill and it was killed. It didn't get passed, but then the governor took care of the default rate, and now we're seeing some benefit. But on the private student loans, that's a big problem. I mean, you touched on it, saying that they're non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, and I have tried to come up with some ideas legislatively on how to help the students and help the people that are indebted. I'd like to introduce myself to you so that you guys would maybe help out with a comment on why you think that this is a big problem, and educating the members of the Senate and the members of the Assembly on what it really means to be stuck with this debt for life when it's non-dischargeable. I guess my question goes into the federal program, what we can be doing that's more aggressive, because I think part of your comment is you want to aggressively litigate and represent the students. Are there students that, I'm reading just the bullet points, so I apologize for that, they may be eligible for discharge. What conversations are we having with the federal government to make sure that we pick up all, I guess, the gray zone, the people, because I don't know what may be eligible for a discharge means, in that it's a bullet point from the LEO's report. But I guess I want to hear, as Senator Hancock sort of intimated, is that another bill that I had that would require private student loan lenders to educate kids or parents about the type of loans, that the fact that there is no forbearance, they just give them basic information. That's another bill that died, but that's another problem. So my question is that what are we doing, what could we do that more aggressively reach out to these students that for some reason don't take advantage? They can have the loan forgiven, but they're just not doing it, right? I know you visited the campus and you got litigation, but how are we communicating with them and just say, you're eligible for this, take advantage of it?
So the Student Aid Commission has a website. We have a Web Grants for Students tool that students can access information on their Cal Grant program, and we've posted messages on there. We've also posted links to the federal loan discharge form that students can link to, complete, and then gives them instructions to return it to the U.S. Department of Education for review and determination of whether they qualify for loan discharge. We also are in communicating with students, because not all Heald College students that are contacting us were Cal Grant recipients. So the information that we've collected or that we've received from Hill College provided us with ledgers of the Cal Grant students and information on their outstanding federal loan balances. It did not provide any information on their private loan information. So we have that information available to us that we can communicate directly to those and even provide the form, the discharge form, to those students directly. The problem, as I stated earlier, is that students don't know the difference between, to them it was a loan.
Right.
And don't understand the difference between the federal and the private. So we can provide more information, not knowing what other loans were dispersed to them, but we, at least knowing that they did get a federal loan and have that option to apply and see if they're eligible for a discharge.